Well, hello, With Gratitude Matt listeners. My name is Matt Moran, and I'm the host for the With Gratitude Matt Show. Our goal with the show is to inspire our listening audience to practice gratitude, regardless of how powerful their storm is. We've learned that the practice of gratitude works much like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. I'm so delighted to have Andy Hill as today's guest. You may recall that we had Andy Hill on the show about a year and a half ago. Andy grew up in Westwood, California. He always dreamed about playing for UCLA. In fact, he did so in the early 1970s. As a freshman, he starred on the freshman basketball team. However, in his sophomore, junior, and senior year, he sat at the end of the bench while his team won 3 national championships. He went on to have a very successful business career in entertainment. He was the president of CBS Entertainment and Channel 1 News. It was 25 years after playing for John Wooden that he reconnected with John Wooden and developed a very close relationship with him until the day John passed. I was so delighted to meet Andy in the mid-2000s when he was talking about the principles that John Wooden instilled in him as an athlete at UCLA. And he talked about John's pyramid of success. Andy, it's such an honor to have you on today's show. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Great to be with you, Matt. I'm proud of you that you're still keeping this going. Your passion, your excitement, and your dedication are palpable. I can feel it right through that digital screen. So good for you.
Well, you had an impact on it. We connected in the early 2000s when you were talking about John Wooden's success. And, I had a similar experience, not on the NCAA level, but at the high school level. I happened to play for a remarkable coach. His name was Dick Burning. And you played with some celebrities and learned about being part of a team many years later was so important. And I learned about that as well, playing in high school with guys like Doug Drenick, Mike Reeves, Tom Temperman, Kurt Kramer, Andy Holman, and the list goes on. And I only share those names with you because those are guys that really supported me when I was early on diagnosed with cancer. And I know you got similar support from your teammates, but they were guys like Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, and was it your backcourt mate?
Henry Bibby. Let me tell you a story about that, Matt, because obviously, I got to sneak in here if I'm going to talk at all. I feel like I'm on a show with Walton. But I got a very early, very dire diagnosis. It turned out not to be true, but the symptoms all lined up, and I sort of had a long weekend because hospitals sort of shut down on Saturday and Sunday. They don't tell you that, but they do. And a Sunday afternoon, 2 of my old friends, and by the way, not active teammates, but guys I'd known my whole life, the great Mike Warren, who was a point guard for UCLA for many years, my hero growing up, and Kenny Washington, who was one of the great heroes of Coach's early championships. And Kenny and Mike came to visit me in the hospital, keeping in mind that, we were sort of thinking, wow, this was kind of not looking so hot for me. And Matt, the nurse had to come by twice and tell us to pipe down. We were laughing so hard. Which only imagine. A guy who's, played sports and connected, or by the way, a woman who's now had that chance to connect with people the way that being in a locker room and, kind of all chasing the same dream and trying to do it together bonds you in a way that nothing else in life does. And, those friendships have certainly outlasted my showbiz friendships. In fact, you'll get a laugh out of this. I'm leaving tomorrow for Hawaii for a bar mitzvah in Hawaii on Monday. where it's the grandson of one of my only friends left from the entertainment business, who I fired twice.
Oh my goodness.
And still my best friend. And, happy to be going to Hawaii for a bar mitzvah. But, boy, the life takes some wild turns. And, I certainly know, like you, I wouldn't wish my illness on anyone, but having had it is, I think, in many ways a great blessing. It does really refocus your thoughts.
There's no question. And the only reason I brought up some of the names that I brought early on is because of the support that I got. And we're talking 25, 30 years past even hearing some of them. And we've reconnected as a result of this. And I'm so grateful for that. And I know you've gotten such great support from some of your teammates as well. If I could go back to, I want to just revisit what was going on in your head when you decided to call coach again. And I think it was 25 some odd years from last talking to him. And what caused you to pick up the phone and dial John Wooden's number?
Well, it was a long process, but it culminated actually on a golf course when I had been playing poorly, which was not unusual. And the guy that I was playing with told me, slow down, get your balance. And balance was something Coach talked about all the time. And whenever I say Coach talked about it all the time, I mean all the time. He didn't talk about that many things, but the things he talked about them all the time. And it was one of those very strange moments where, as a golfer, if you get set up just right, there's this moment of sort of green light. Wow, it's just so easy. And Coach was sitting right on my shoulder. I just nailed him to about 1.5 feet, which, by the way, when I used to tell this story, Coach used to interrupt and say, yeah, and he missed the putt, but I didn't. And, kind of in that moment, I realized, oh man, this guy sort of taught me everything I knew. What I realized was my gift in the entertainment business, was getting people to work together as a group towards a bigger goal that was bigger than any of them. And to realize they had to work together to get there, and that you needed talented people to get there, so it just made it more difficult because talented people are more difficult. And, wow, how much does that sound like coaching basketball? Yeah. I'm a little slow, Matt. 25 years, I will admit, was a slow boil. But then when I realized I needed to call him, it actually took me about 48 hours to work up the courage to actually dial the number, 818-343-2266. It's no longer in service. And my heart was just thumping because there's so much mixed in there, so much unresolved stuff, so many unsaid things. And then the answering machine picked up, and I took a big sigh of relief and went, oh man, this is cool. I don't have to talk to him. And so I said, hi, Coach, this is Andy Hill. And man, he had really quick hands. He used to do this thing in practice with his hands, It's like, boom, where are you? He didn't say hello. I don't know, maybe that's an Indiana deal. You're a Midwest guy. I don't know. Where are you? And so like a 20-year-old, which was who I was when I last really connected with him, I said, well, what do you mean, who am I? Where am I? Where are you? And then he took a beat and kind of realized, okay, we need an adult in this conversation. And he said, God, Andy, I'd really like to see it. When can I see it? And I went to see him the next day, and we spent about 4 hours together, Matt. It was stunning to me. As we spent that time together, I realized how much I had sought his approval, even though I never saw him. I did all these TV shows that, the argument was people like John Wooden liked him. They were old. He loved my shows, man. He loved Dr. Quinn, Touched by an Angel, and Walker, Texas Ranger. Oh man, those were Coach's shows. And I realized, wow, is that just a coincidence? That was sort of the centerpiece of my career? No, of course not. So, he had a very, very powerful influence. And after that day, we just got closer and closer.
You sure did. And you co-wrote this book that I'm holding up right now. Sorry. It's Be Quick, but Don't Hurry. And inside of it, we've got signed by Andy Hill. I was so honored to be part of a crowd. I want to say 2002, 2003, but you really impacted me by sharing Coach's Pyramid of Success. And you've done that for so many.
Hey, Ted Lasso, baby.
Yeah.
We're in the big time now.
Well, I had the opportunity. I don't think I told you this. I know you're really close to Bill Walton. And 1986. No, I'm sorry. That was the basketball team. 1996 Olympics down in Atlanta. Bill was doing the volleyball. And I was a huge Bill Walton fan, Celtics fan. Following the Celtics in 86. Bill's down there. There's not a lot of people at the volleyball. People circling around, trying to get his attention. And I was standing back, and I simply said, Bill, 86 Celtics, one of the best teams ever. And he looked right back at me, and he said, darn right. And it was just really cool to make that connection. And what has that friendship meant to you over the years?
Kind of pretty indescribable, I'd say. By the way, if I move my head a little bit, you can see next to that picture, Coach, there's a picture of Bill with my grandson.
Oh, wow.
We don't really have a mark on the wall with my grandson. We have pictures with Uncle Bill standing there as my grandson gets taller and taller. Listen, I'm a lucky guy. Bill's an amazing friend. He's curious and interested in making the world a better place. And we connected when we were children. I was the first guy to take Bill on a recruiting thing for UCLA. It's not like it is now where they start recruiting kids in the 7th and 8th grade. And actually, UCLA was recruiting his brother Bruce for the football team. Bruce, who passed not that long ago, Bruce played for the Dallas Cowboys and went to UCLA. And so his little brother wanted to tag along for the weekend, Bill, and they had me take him to a Laker game and out to dinner. I don't think he'd ever been in a real restaurant before, Matt. I mean, first he could barely speak. I mean, really, he could barely speak. And there are days when we're all sort of nostalgic for those days when Bill could barely speak. But, what a unique talent. And to get a chance to play with and against him, there's nothing, as a basketball player, wow. Bill and Jamaal and the great Greg Lee, who, I have to say just passed away. And once again, reflecting back on this area of gratitude, Matt, if I can just take that for a moment, because Greg was one of the all-time greats at UCLA who sublimated his own talents. He played with two guys, Jamaal Wilkes and Bill Walton, who were in the Hall of Fame. And he realized that what we really need to do is to get the ball to them. And that's what Greg did. And he had an extraordinary life. He was a championship volleyball player, as I'm sure you know from what you said earlier. Greg Lee and Jim Menges won, I think, more open championships in a row than anyone in history. And when we went to our reunion last year, which was probably the last time Greg was out in public, it was the last chance to see everybody. There were two guys who weren't there. Tommy Curtis and Vince Carson had passed. And about 3 months after that reunion, Matt, I went out and I tried to play golf. And I have a lot of neuropathy in my hands, and that's from a neck problem. And I've got a lot of neuropathy in my legs, but that's a chemo issue. And, and I'm alive.
Yeah, you sure are.
And I played lousy. I mean, I played lousy. I fell down. I cut myself. I felt so awkward. that actually for about 2 days I got into a really dark place. So, God, I thought I'm retired. I can play golf now. And the truth of it is I can't. And then I thought, wow, I got teammates that aren't even able to show up. They're gone. And Greg, I could tell at the reunion didn't have that much time. That's a quarter of my team, Matt. Not even here anymore. And so, we're alive. It's beautiful outside. Well, I'm in sunny Southern California, so I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but the ability to focus and the need to have intent to focus on gratitude, because I think that was so much of what Coach Wooden's philosophy was wrapped around, was intention in life. Where are you going? How are you going to get there? And you and I both know, and certainly both know because, once you've had an illness, you always have that illness. You get better, but you don't totally lose the illness. And you find over time that's one of the great blessings is, man, it's great to be alive. That so many people don't really kind of, what do you mean? That's kind of morbid, isn't it? I was like, no, that's the opposite of morbid. It is the opposite.
As I hear you talk about that, Andy, I am reminded, and I've shared this with a lot of people, I think because of my diagnosis, I've become a better friend. I've become a better employee, a better father, a better husband, and the list goes on and on. And for that, I am grateful. And for somebody that has never been through an illness like we have, looks at that and says, oh my God, you're crazy. How can you be grateful for all that? But I am. And you know that.
Well, and you say that to me, and as I'm just going to smile and say, yeah, I get it totally. And the truth of it is, it's in an odd way why we're part of a exclusive fraternity, which we didn't ask to join.
That's right.
But at the same time, yes, I feel those things myself. I feel them very powerfully. And by the way, I don't know if you've experienced this either, Matt, but I was in the entertainment business. As I used to tell my wife, it's a very social business, and you have a lot of friends. Yep. And I think, the illness really narrows your scope, your frame of reference, your sense of, like you said, those fellas you played ball with.
Yep.
They're lifetime friends.
Absolutely.
They're not next year's friends or last year's friends. They're lifetime friends. No question. That is a gift. And by the way, I think in many ways something that sports is one of its great contributions, if you're lucky enough, as both of us were, to play for a great coach, because you have to play for a great coach to really experience being part of a team.
There's no question. Andy, so we're, call it a month away from the start of the NCAA tournament. You had the good fortune of playing for 3 national championship teams. As we get started, next month with the NCAA March Madness, what would Coach say about the game today versus the one that you played in the early to mid 70s?
Wow. I mean, that's a 5-hour program, Matt. We don't have time to really answer that. I mean, Coach was not a fan of dunking. Well, that's the game today, dunking and shooting 3-point shots. I mean, in truth, having the kind of record Coach had is improbable anyhow. Yep. But with the addition of the 3-point shot, it's impossible because teams can get hot. And it's this. You take a long 2 or a short corner 3 could be closer than a long 2. and you add another point for it. Wow. I mean, that's, it's changed the balance of the game because, coach's thing was sort of, hey man, you want to beat me from out there? I'll pat you on the back and say, nice shot. And by the way, I just as soon Walton was shooting at the rim. I kind of like my chances there because they were all worth the same. Yep. And now it's been changed so much. I think that anybody who doesn't see the talent and athleticism of these players is blind. It's stunning. The skill level is stunning. And at its highest level, the team play is stunning. When you get into the NBA playoffs and watch the teams that are winning, I watched Denver the other night. Boy, are they fun. Yep. And watch the big joker. Wow, is that fun? That's great. Somebody tell me they don't like watching pro basketball. Go watch those guys. They're fantastic. But of course, what you get in this NCAA tournament, and I think it's ultimately the allure of sports in general, is we know that everything we watch on TV is fake. I used to make shows about, a doctor in the 1860s. She wasn't really there, I mean, come on. Although we would go places and occasionally people would ask Jane Seymour for medical advice. It's sort of like, she's not really a doctor. That she just plays one on TV. And everything seems fake in terms of, can I believe, but you go watch a college basketball game and watch those kids who just won and watch the kid who missed a shot at the end crying on the sideline. That's real. That's as real can be. And the cheerleaders, jumping up and down on one end and crying on the other end. And I think that we all just get, and it's a national event in the way that no other sporting event is. There are teams that I have to go look on my computer to find out where are they? I don't even know. Schools like Xavier. Where is Xavier? I don't know.
Oh, come on. You know where Xavier is. Don't say that to me.
I had to throw that in there for you.
Hey, at least you pronounced it properly.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
A lot of guys will call it Xavier, and that drives me nuts.
No. Come on. We know you. I'm just kidding you. A great basketball school.
Well, I'm curious because I was just born when you were playing. Back when you were playing, how many teams? Well, the reason I'm asking this question, I feel like today there's really probably 15, maybe 20 teams when they enter the tournament that probably have a reasonable shot at winning the tournament. What was it like when you were playing back in that day?
Well, first of all, it was different. We only played 4 games to win it all. So that meant that, there were far fewer teams in the tournament.
Yep.
But every team in the tournament had won their conference.
Okay.
You weren't playing a number 5. You weren't playing a team that came in 5th in the Big 12. We were playing the Big 12 champion.
Got it.
And the tournament was nowhere near as big as it is now in terms of a media event. Really that Astrodome game, which was in '68. The Houston UCLA game really started the whole thing, rolling downhill, but it was just reaching a peak, and then Bird and Magic showed up, and it exploded. But it was incredibly exciting, and it is such a unique event. Pity the fool who doesn't realize that over time, Matt, this gambling addiction we've all bought into is going to explode. If they think there's not a gambling scandal coming, they're kidding themselves. I'm sort of stunned at the greed of all these sports teams attaching themselves to it. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I actually blew the national line on an NCAA semifinal game where coach put me in with a minute and a half to go, and they didn't have 14 little guys with, brushes in those days. And we were playing Kansas in the Astrodome in front of 40,000 people, and they had this guy who's a big old white dude, Dave Robish, big left-handed kid, and with a minute and a half left to go, he was down there sweating like a pig. And so they shot the free throw and they made it. And then somebody took it out of bounds, passed it to me. I like with great confidence cleared everybody out so I could take this sucker, and then went bang flat on my face because I was standing in a puddle of Dave Robish's sweat.
Oh my
So
gosh.
now that's the last score of the game. Next 90 seconds goes by, nothing happens, and we go running to the locker room, which at the Astrodome is about a quarter of a mile away. It's not like you just run to the locker room. You got a ways to go. And we're running to the locker room, and about every fourth row, Matt, there was some dude that looked kind of like you screaming at me, you know. And I had no idea what they were screaming about, but I'd blown the spread.
You needed to score a bucket.
No, I needed to just stand on my feet.
Oh. Oh, my Lord.
I needed to just
That's
stand on my feet, and I blew the spread, and these guys lost their bets. Well, now, and to be fair, this was in 1970, where, you didn't even know what the odds were. Right? You had to have a bookie to know the odds. Hey, call Sally. He'll give you the odds on that one. Now they're in the paper. Everybody knows the odds. And you and I both know when they're going to go and try and get these kids to give them money, they're going to give them money to not cover. People don't understand. Nobody ever gets paid to lose a game. Nobody's going to lose a game. They get paid to not cover. And it's going to be like this NIL thing. Ultimately, the kids, there's going to be a lot of damage on these kids.
So as I heard you talking about the gambling in the cover, spread and protecting that, one big thing, and certainly that's exploded in not just in basketball, but sport in general. Big change in college sport is, two things I think really. Number one, the transfer portal. Kids able to transfer without sitting out makes it easier for a kid that may be marginal to go to another school that he can play right away. And the second thing is NIL. How does that play an impact on the game moving forward, and what would Coach say to that?
He'd say, goodness gracious sakes alive. That's what he'd say. And by the way, let me just add that my beloved UCLA Bruins, who I'm going to go watch beat Stanford tonight in Pauley Pavilion with my grandson, talk about gratitude. They are the only big-time school in America who has no new transfers on their team this year. Nobody left. There were kids that left to go play pro ball, but they didn't go to other schools, and they just brought a few kids in. And I understand recruiting is crazy, and you recruit these 5-star kids. I mean, whoever imagined you'd be in a position right now where UNC, Kentucky, Kansas, not Kansas, they're in Duke. They're all on the bubble. Now,
That's
something
correct.
tells me that when, Joe Lunardi ends up shaking this bubble and the guys at the networks end up shaking Joe Lunardi, they'll be in the tournament.
Andy,
Am I being cynical, Matt?
No. I get it. Let me ask you this. So, I didn't really follow college basketball when I was 2 or 3 years old and you were playing. So, but
ouch! Ouch! Wow!
But, no. So, Coach, I have to believe, had a huge impact on the outcome of a team's season. How important is the coach in today's game?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. And of course, what Coach was great at was getting guys to all play together to win the whole doggone thing. And when they got there, they felt like they actually got there without it being all about him. Yep. I think oftentimes coaches want it to be about them. And one of Coach's real secrets was he didn't want to be about him. When he was given the award as the greatest coach ever by Sporting News, don't know if I told you this story. I suspect I did. Uh, the when he and this was the last speech he ever gave, Matt. The first thing he did, there were 10 of his former players there. I was one of them. And he turned to the former players and he said, you guys really deserve this. I just like to think I helped. Now, you might ask, is that genuine? Yes. Yes, it is. Now, by the way, and this is where people get very confused. John Wooden knew he was one heck of a basketball coach, which he thought was, like being a really good taxi driver or a great doctor or a really good teacher. They were all, wow, oh, good, you're good at that. But, society made it seem like being a big basketball coach was a bigger deal, and he never felt that. So the humility that you saw wasn't that he didn't have great confidence that he was a really good basketball coach. It just for him was something to be kept in perspective. Come on, it's a bunch of people in their underpants trying to throw a ball in a hoop.
The thing that I've felt just from hearing you talk about Coach in the relationships that he had, not only with you, but other players, I get a sense that beyond just coaching a team, he really got to the point where he absolutely just loved his players through thick and thin. And I sense that because of the love that you have for Coach, but I think it went coach to player as well. How much did you feel that as a player, or was that something more that you felt years later after you reconnected?
I didn't feel it at all as a player. He used to say something that made no sense, which, if you're 20, it makes no sense. If you've been a parent, it makes perfect sense, which is, I don't like you all the same, but I'd like to think I love you all the same. Say that to a 20-year-old kid, and it's like, what? As a parent, I understand that completely. So, some of the things that he said to us as we were young that didn't resonate made a lot more sense. And then, of course, when we reconnected with him, Matt, I think one of the things that I found most interesting about Coach was that he didn't care about winning. He loved to win. But I think he saw this experience of putting people to a test, taking them to a limit, seeing how far they could go, would develop lots of life skills that would benefit people in life. Yep. But he was making $32,500 a year. Right. And now there's so much money involved that saying all those things about, it's kind of like, really? That's what you're thinking? Or aren't you thinking about your next contract or, the next time a job opens up? How come these college coaches, they can all leave? Pro coaches can't leave. I've never understood that. College coaches, if I've got a lousy coach and I want to go hire Eric Spoelstra and I pick up the phone and call Eric Spoelstra's agent, the next 15 minutes later, Pat Riley is in my office with a gun telling me to cut it out. And then the commissioner takes a draft choice away. But in college, everybody's fair game. At the same time that these people are out on the road trying to talk these kids into coming to work to make them more money. I mean, it's a screwy system now. There's too much money involved. And I feel very grateful to have grown up when I did. Yep. I'm not one of these people who wishes I could start all over again. I feel fortunate that, I was able to go to high school and go to one high school. I feel fortunate that the portal was not available so that, I stuck it out. Best thing I ever did was I stuck it out because they didn't give me kind of this, you can leave out back the back door. We'll grease the fire pole for you and you can get the hell out of here. No. It's like, stick it out, man. Stick it out.
Andy, I want to, as we kind of wrap things up here, I want to ask one final question, and it's around just your time at UCLA. And I know you grew up right in the neighborhood, dreamt about going there, but to your point, you're sitting on the bench your sophomore year, junior year, senior year. There had to have been some times where you thought about going somewhere else. And you touched on how grateful you are that you stayed that long, or you stayed through the 4 years. Really, how grateful are you, number one, that you didn't go to another school? Because you certainly had other top choices to go to. And maybe how grateful or how different would your life been had you not had the experience with Coach for those 4 years?
Well, that's the last one's totally unanswerable. I have no idea. It is why I am a great believer when people look back in their life and what a waste of time. Here we are, Matt, you and I both sitting up, not wearing a hospital gown, healthy, smiling. Hallelujah. Life is great.
Right.
Life is great.
Amen to that.
And yes, we have challenges. Yes, people are going hungry. People are suffering from earthquakes and weather and all these other things. But at the end of the day, when I look at and this is something we got to balance in our life, all these things are happening. And I can't just stick my head in the sand and act like they aren't. But at the same time, I have to take what I have, look at it and go, wow, what a lucky person I am. Because as you know, when you do that, how do you feel? Fantastic. How does your stress level feel? It's gone. Right. It's just gone. Yep. And, so what a great addiction to build into your day. One of the things I got to do a few years ago was give a TEDx talk with the great Norman Lear. And he was there, 97 years old, a little pork pie hat. And Norman talked about his joy every morning when he would make himself, which I do as well, his cup of coffee. I wake up every morning and I think about Norman Lear and think, wow, yeah, isn't this great? Isn't this fantastic? And thank you, Norman, because you know what? Just looking at you, just feeling that gratitude, I can tell that's part of what kept that guy going. That's part of why that guy's still on fire. And, if you can embrace it, at the same time, keeping yourself open to what is real in the world. I mean, we have friends who are sick and we have friends who we lose and, all of the life challenges that we face. But we have the ability to bring ourselves back to our own gratitude if we are fortunate enough to be in the kind of circumstances we are in. And yet you and I both know so many people with so much to be grateful for who just can't bring themselves to focus on their own sense of joy and gratitude. And it's sad to see, but all we can do is set an example for others. And the fact that you're out here trying to spread the word, good for you, man. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Andy. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to have you back on today's show because, as we mentioned, the NCAA tournament is right around the corner, and you were part of historical teams that we'll never see teams like that ever again. We don't see repeat champions, let alone 3-4-peats. And the principles that you shared around Coach have made a difference in my life, and I think they'll make a difference in other people's lives. I'm so grateful to have you. I think about 3 things each and every day, and I think they might help other people thrive in the lives that they're trying to thrive in. Number 1, it's find the courage to be grateful, regardless of how powerful your storm is. Secondly, truly be present to those you're with. You'd be amazed at the gifts that are right in front of you if you're just present. But if you're in your phone, if you're not paying attention to them, you're off on something, you're going to miss that. And lastly, pay attention to how you're feeding your mind, your body, and your soul. Today's guest was 3-time NCAA basketball champion, Andy Hill. Andy, it's such an honor to have you on today's show. If today's show inspired you in some way, shape, or form, subscribe to the show, comment on it, and share it with others. Until next time, with gratitude, Matt listeners, find the courage to be grateful. Godspeed, my friends.